Hello, I'm Rob Jones, and joining me is Prakash Senghani, Director, Head of Digital Delivery at JLL. Prakash is one of our shortlisted candidates for the Construction Technology Leader category of the 2021 Construction Technology Awards. The awards celebrate new approaches and best-in-class use of technology within the built environment. In this category, we've shortlisted the leaders who have successfully led planning, adoption, or use of digital technology in the built environment. The winner will be announced on the 2nd of June during the Construction Technology Festival in Dubai. Prakash, kicking straight off, you're a big advocate of digitalisation in the construction sector, and you've been involved in so many projects where digitalisation and such technologies have been pivotal. Was technology always a big focus for you, or is this something that grew over time within construction?
Hi, Rob. It's definitely been something that's been part of my life from the very beginning of my career. When I first started, building information modeling was just sort of coming out of academia and coming out of papers and coming into the real world, if you like. And I was fortunate that as part of my undergraduate placements, I got exposure to it, and I was working on exploring how this at the time new technology could be applied to provide benefits to the construction industry. So yeah, it's been part of what I've been doing from the very, very beginning of my career.
And is there a particular technology you've focused on, or is it broader than that?
So I think in the early parts of my career, it was definitely all around BIM and all around how we can get the processes in place, how we can get the skills in place, and just an understanding of the technology and how it can benefit and where the value came from. As that became to be sort of more seated and understood within the industry, there's been periphery sort of technologies and innovations around BIM. So the use of BIM for AR and then into 4D and 5D and those things. And then more recently, that's grown to encompass data capture, collection and analysis much more broadly. And so now, yeah, it's much more wider than BIM, including things like laser scanning and drones and 3D printing and all those things that we hear about.
And it's so interesting you mentioned data, because that for me is one of the big challenges I think the construction sector is going to face in the coming years. And how do you make sure you know what data you have? How do you make sure that you've collected it without bias so that there's integrity to that data? Have you got the right people in place who know how to analyze that data to actually give you sensible answers, rather than send you down a path that is just wrong, perhaps because you haven't collected it without bias?
Yeah, so yeah, I think that, look, even BIM is all about data, right? It's about the I in BIM is about information, and information comes from data. And so the whole, yeah, all of the digitalization that we're working on is all about data. And you made some really good points there. The other thing I think we don't really talk about is the security of the data and being able to make sure that whilst we're collecting it and we're making sure that it's unbiased and doing useful things of it, we're going to start becoming targets for people to try and get access to it and either hold us ransom or to steal it for other purposes and other nefarious needs. So that's another element of data I think that's really important and probably less talked about than some of the others.
And actually, again, very interesting area, and one where, particularly for companies working on critical infrastructure, they probably don't even realize how potentially exposed they can be. And particularly, I've noticed more and more when people talk about cloud and where cloud always looked like it was a fairly simple idea of public cloud, it's secure, there's companies that provide it. Now it's far more nuanced, and there are companies there are certainly private companies, government clients, who don't want you using public cloud anymore. They want cloud at customer, local cloud. Again, it's a changing area.
Yeah, and look, I think part of that is security, but more of it is to do with sovereignty. So particularly with governments, they don't want to have their data, or particularly around critical or data that's going to be classed as nationally important, leaving their own jurisdiction. So they don't want it stored outside, just in case, I don't know, they fall out with that country or something happens, which means that they might not be able to get access to this data whenever they want it. So there's two elements to it. There's definitely the security side of it, but there's also the sovereignty side of it.
Are there particular are there particular projects that you've worked on where construction technology was central to it that you're very proud of?
Yeah, certainly. So there's the digital twin project that we worked on in Saudi Arabia, where the project, when we first came to it, was part built. And they wanted to finish it off. And unfortunately, the information for the part built elements of it was either poor or non-existent. And so we came up with a strategy to essentially create a digital twin of this part built asset, so that then it can be built upon to complete it. And then we realized that the benefits of that were to actually then we could take that information over and through into the operations of that building. So we laser scanned something like 1 million square meters worth of floor area, created BIM models of those, and inputted information around all of the sort of maintainable assets and critical assets that are going to be used to operate it. And we linked that information into the computer-aided facilities management software. And so we were able to essentially take it through this full life cycle. And now it's a living, breathing digital twin. So that's one where technology played a critical part. We wouldn't have been able to do it without laser scan, without the advancements in BIM, without the sort of API integrations that we're seeing between multiple softwares, and to be able to deliver what we did for that client.
And digital twins are very interesting as well, because of course it's something that you can see is going to be used more and more in the future, particularly as companies or asset owners want to manage and run their asset more efficiently, maintain the costs, have predictive maintenance. They can understand when something's not, maybe not functioning as it should. It means you don't have to have as many people on site necessarily doing that, because you can send them. So if your asset is in a remote area, it makes it much easier. I haven't seen it widely used yet in the Middle East. I know people talk about it a lot. Is this something that isn't used, but you expect to see used much more?
So to be honest, we're seeing it on almost all projects that we're working on now, and it's coming under this banner of smart cities as well. And almost all of the large scale projects that we're working on at the moment, there's some component of smart city / digital twin that we're working on. So yes, maybe we're not hearing about it enough. Perhaps that's a failing on our part of not talking about it enough. But it's certainly there. It's no longer theoretical. It's being practically implemented and utilized. And I think you touched on. I think as we start moving towards a much more sustainable and environmentally sustainable future, and being driven, a lot of the sort of recovery from COVID is now being talked about to be much more greener. Digital twins are going to play a huge part in, first of all, understanding where you are in terms of your carbon footprint, energy use, water usage, all of those things, because that's a big part of the problem, right? Is understanding what you're doing right now, and then being able to improve on that through managing the use of it and adopting technologies to make sure that you're using some of this stuff more efficiently. So certainly, I think it's not something that I don't see it as something that's coming in the future. I see it as that it's already started now, and we're going to just see more and more of it going forward.
And fundamentally changing facilities management.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think not only that, it's fundamentally changing the way that we design upfront as well. So when we're looking at greenfield or brownfield sites, particularly in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we're looking at how we can put some of this critical infrastructure in to be inherently sustainable and inherently more efficient to begin with right from the start. And this is like we're challenging some of the old ways that, as most designers know, specifications and things like that are usually just pulled off of the shelf from a previous project. You don't rewrite specifications for every single project. But now what we are seeing is people challenging that and making sure that we've got the latest and the most efficient things being specified on projects. So yes, it's definitely going to have a profound impact on the way we manage and operate our assets, but it's always also having an impact on the way that we design.
I said at the beginning that you've been a big advocate of digitalization. You've also been a big advocate of on-site safety. So tell me about that and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so look, I think in order for you to be a successful project and improve productivity and all of those things, yes, there's the digital tools and that help, but being safe has many benefits, right? As well as obviously making sure that we have sustainability in the fact that people are not being injured long-term, having long-term injuries and fatalities on our sites. We also means usually a safe site is a more productive site. It's one that achieves its goals much more readily than other projects. And so I've, as you well know, got my own startup, and we're looking at how we can completely change the way people interact with safety management systems. I think a lot of the digital transformation has concentrated probably too heavily on some of the shinier stuff and some of the more fancier stuff, the things that bring in the headlines, and safety is almost have taken a back step in this. And there's a huge opportunity for us to utilize technologies such as mobile, use technologies such as AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning to help make safety much more intuitive, to democratize it, to make sure that it becomes everyone's responsibility and people actually want to participate in it, and to then analyze that data. Because one of the things I think that we're really poor at, not just in safety, but across the piece, is utilizing the data that we're collecting to benefit us.
I think it's so interesting you say that, because in terms of the shiny, everybody focuses on the shiny stuff. And sometimes I spoke recently to somebody who's much more focused on automation in terms of heavy equipment. And it was fascinating to hear some of the things that he was talking about in terms of what can be done now. But it's stuff that, because it's it's not shiny, as you say, it doesn't get talked about very much. So it's very interesting that, again, safety is really beginning to come to the fore. And I know you're not alone in this, actually. I've noticed that more and more it's being talked about. And I guess that's also it's partly about just the human aspect, but it's also the aspect of keeping things running efficiently, keeping things running on track, and keeping things on budget as well.
Exactly. And I think also, I think safety's has become much more of a focus because of the COVID impact, right? For example, just a simple thing, PPE has now entered public lexicon, right? People, the ordinary people would probably never have come across the term PPE. We in the construction industry obviously have had known about it for a long time. So things like that and phrases like that, and just this onus on managing safety and keeping people safe has started to become much more of a focus. And I think that that's definitely going to have an impact, and a lasting impact on us going forward.
What skills do you think have been important to you for you to reach this point of your career?
I think adaptability is probably the one that's been the most important. I think very early on, and I think this was started from my degree, from my university days, is not to be so rigid, right? And be open to the fact that things are going to be changing, and sometimes just having to go with the flow, right? I think that's been a key asset, and being open to new ideas, and being open to sometimes not knowing how some of these things are going to turn out, but going down that avenue anyway. That for me has been massively important.
And I'm flipping that. What do you think people who work closely with you learn from you?
The biggest thing I hope people learn from me is that if you put the effort in and you're enthusiastic and passionate about what you do, you're going to succeed. I tend to go in with both feet and arms and legs and everything first into things, and like I mentioned, not really knowing whether it's going to turn out right, but putting the effort in and truly sort of believing in getting out of it the other side has proved to be a really successful strategy for me. And so I hope people who are working alongside me learn that being enthusiastic, being passionate, and having some faith are key tools.
And you must have seen so much change with attitudes towards digitalization over the years. Now you must see it as such a competitive advantage. When you look at the value chain or the supply chain, are you finding that, I guess, both sides of where you are, so to client and to subcontractors, etc., are they all becoming much more open to the benefits of beyond BIM, the types of technologies you've been talking about?
100%. So if I need to give you an example, when I moved to the Middle East about 8 years ago, and then BIM was still quite new to the region, and we were having to spend sometimes months trying to convince clients of the benefits of BIM. Every time we'd get questions about, okay, where's the ROI going to come from? What's the value benefit for me? And what during which stages is it most valuable? How much is it going to cost us? How much are we going to get back? You know, all of these types of questions. We used to spend an inordinate amount of time justifying why we should be using tools like BIM. I suppose over the last 18 months, and this was even pre-COVID, right? Even before COVID, I definitely saw a change where we were being pulled. Clients were asking us, coming to us and telling us, okay, what can we do? What should we be doing differently from a technological point of view? What companies should we be talking to? What technologies should we be looking at? What skills should we be getting into our organizations? And I definitely saw that. And I think the COVID situation, it's been well talked about, has massively accelerated that. The biggest thing, the biggest impact I think that COVID has had on digitization and digital transformation is people's attitude towards trying it, right? So things like Zoom and Teams and all of these things, they're digital tools that perhaps some people who were very traditionalist and anti technology and digital have had to adopt. They've been forced to do it. And a lot of them have seen that, yes, okay, there is some benefit in utilizing digital tools. And just that changing and the opening up of that mindset, I think that's going to be a lasting thing going forward.
You've talked about a lot of technologies here in our discussion. If there were the kind of one or two that you had to identify that were going to be real game changers for the future, what do you think they would be and why?
So there's probably two that are really stand out for me, and I think that they've got the biggest potential to change what we do. The first one is the practical application of artificial intelligence. I think a lot is said and spoken about the potential of it. The actual, when you actually get down to the practicalities of it, because of some of the things you mentioned about the bias in the data, how we capture and store it, how we actually then utilize it. I think once we figured some of those things out, that's going to have a profound effect on virtually all aspects of what we do, the way that we design, the way that we build, the way that we operate and maintain across the entire life cycle. So that's one thing that I think is going to have a massive impact. And the other one, I think, is augmented reality. There's this sort of, I think we're at this balance point now, or this tipping point now, where people are seeing that VR definitely, or virtual reality, has its place. But I think augmented reality, as the cost of the hardware comes down and more innovation starts happening within that space, we're definitely going to see that changing the way that we're delivered information. You know, it's still like over the past, say, 10 to 15 years, we've gotten used to first consuming information on a desktop, now consuming it on a mobile. I think that AR, we're going to start consuming it in a different format, and that's going to change the way that we build.
So getting to that point where you have designs that people can then, I guess, through a headset, unless that changes, but you can take them to the site and actually they can see and walk through the site and see how it's going to look in future.
So that's one definite use case. Another one is whilst you're building, you can see what the thing is going to look like, or how it's got to be put together. You can do things like be able to validate whether the tools or the equipment that you're using has been maintained and has got the latest certification. You can train people in a much more intuitive way, and then you can operate and maintain these things as well, right? Imagine coming up to an air handling unit and having the instruction manual flashing between in front of your eyes, and it actually guiding you on how to replace a part or something like that. There's a whole number of use cases, and I think as more and more of these headsets more companies start building some of these headsets. There's rumors that Apple is going to release one soon. The cost of these things will go down, and it'll attract a whole plethora of other companies to build things on top of it as a platform.
Prakash, thank you for your time, and good luck with your shortlist for the Construction Technology Leader Award.
Thank you so much. So it's an honor to even be nominated. So thank you so much.